What's up, guys? It's Thiago from the Foot and Fist Sports Network, back to talk about some UFC, and this weekend it is UFC Pittsburgh featuring the return of former UFC middleweight champion Luke Rockhold, who will be taking on David Branch, who is a former World Series of Fighting champion. Now, this is going to be a pretty short video because of the fact that there aren't a whole lot of fights on this card that are really relevant and worth talking about. So let's go ahead and jump straight into the predictions with Hector Lombard versus Anthony Smith. And Hector Lombard, ever since he was with Bellator, has always been known as a heavy-handed guy who also has some really good grappling. And on his day, he can really terrorize some of the best fighters in the world. His big problem is that he has no cardio. He's so thick that within the first round and a half, he's good. But after that, like the end of round 2 and the round 3 and even round 4 and 5 when he's been scheduled for title fights, he really struggles to finish those fights. And he really collapses when it matters. We saw him against Neil Magny. He was doing tremendous in that first round, but then he started to get really tired. He was pounding the shit out of Magny, and then his cardio was so bad that he couldn't take it anymore, and Magny turned around and beat the hell out of him. If that happens against Anthony Smith, then there is a chance of him losing this one, but I think he's going to be too well-rounded for Smith, who isn't a bad fighter in his own right, but Hector Lombard's on another level. He is pretty old right now, Lombard. He's almost 40? But still, I think that his heavy-handedness and the fact that he is a better grappler than I would say than Anthony Smith, I think that's going to favor him early on, and he will get a TKO in the first round. But I think that he needs to finish the fight before the midway point in round 2, because if not, he's going to start struggling. But I do think he is just a good enough fighter to finish Smith within the first round. The co-main event is Mike Perry versus Alex Reyes, and Mike Perry was originally scheduled to fight Thiago Alves, and I was really sad to see that fight slipped up because that was going to be an insane fight. Thiago Alves is always the guy that's willing to go out there and brawl, and Mike Perry is a brawler through and through. He loves to fucking get in there and just have an absolute mayhem-filled brawl, and that would have been a tremendous fight to see. Unfortunately, Thiago Alves was stuck in Florida due to the hurricane. Apparently, there were some problems there. Mike Perry was also in Florida during the hurricane, but luckily for him, he was able to get away from there in time and still be able to go out there and fight. Thiago Alves wasn't able to. I would love to see these guys fight again down the line, or at least be scheduled again down the line. That would be a tremendous fight. Alex Reyes, I think, is thrown in there, and hats off to him for taking this fight with 5 days notice, but I think he's going to be thrown in there just to take a beating, because Mike Perry, he has monstrous power, and he's beaten some really tough guys. He's already had a few tough matchups in the UFC, and that is big. Alex Reyes, he's eventually going to be a pretty decent fighter probably, but right now, Mike Perry, with such great striking, he's actually just a really tough dude, and he's one of those guys who is looking like a monster at welterweight and possibly a future contender. He's a little bit short for the weight class, but he's really just a thick dude, so he should be able to be there, at least competing. He should be pretty fine in that weight class. I like him there. I think he has tremendous talent, and I would love to see him turn into a very well-rounded fighter, because his wrestling isn't lights out. He has some pretty decent takedown defense, but it's nothing special there. So if he can really start mixing takedown defense, maybe throw in some takedowns of his own, and also have some really good grappling like jiu-jitsu, I think that would be a recipe for disaster for any opponent he faces, because with that power, he's dangerous in any situation, and if he can really become a well-rounded fighter, there's no limit to what he can do, because anytime you have that power, anytime you're a fighter with heavy-handed power, stuff like that, there's always a chance of you knocking out just about anybody in the world. And if he can mix things up, be sort of like a Rumble Johnson, who Rumble Johnson knew he had that mentality problem. He breaks quite easily. But if Mike Perry can keep this mentality he has, really go the distance and have some really tough, gritty performances, and still have that power and just being very well-rounded, there's really no limit to what he can do. He's a future title contender without a doubt. And the main event is Luke Rockhold versus David Branch. Like I said, David Branch is a former World Series of Fighting champion, so he has to be respected. He has a really good record. I think he has 23 wins, 3 losses. All 3 losses have come via different types of losses. He lost 1 by decision, 1 by submission, and 1 by knockout. So he doesn't have one clear weakness. His strengths are submissions, I would say, because he has 7 submission wins. If I'm not mistaken, he had, 6 knockouts, and the rest were decisions, however many that is. So he is a pretty well-rounded fighter, without a doubt. And Luke Rockhold is the epitome of well-rounded fighter. His striking is tremendous. Yes, his boxing defense was pretty bad against Michael Bisping, but he went in there really underestimating Michael Bisping. So he had his hands down, his chin out. He just completely had no fear and no respect for Michael Bisping in any way whatsoever. So that turned out to really cost him pretty badly. But I think against David Branch, he's going to have learned from that mistake. He's going to fight a lot more intelligently, training with Henry Hooft is also going to add a different style to his game. He's also had a year off, so he's probably going to be a lot better. His jiu-jitsu is obviously always tremendous, and overall, he's just such a great fighter. He is, in my opinion, the very best middleweight we've probably ever seen. Maybe Anderson Silva in his prime was better, but if you look at Anderson Silva's record, he has some salty wins. Like, he's fought some pretty big bums. Whereas Rockhold, at a very young age, beat Jacare Souza, who was obviously very inexperienced too. He's beat Tim Kennedy. He's already beaten Michael Bisping. He beat Chris Weidman in devastating fashion. He beat Lyoto Machida in devastating fashion. He has some monstrous wins, some really, really good wins. So I think that if he can sort of get himself back on track, beat David Branch, beat either Robert Whittaker or Michael Bisping or GSP, whatever the fuck's going to happen in that title picture right there, beat those guys and maybe defend his title a few times, I think that he's arguably the greatest middleweight of all time, even though right now I think talent-wise, he's at the very top. Because Anderson Silva, like I said, he beat some shitty fighters like Chris Lieben, Forrest Griffin, Stephen Bonner. He beat some guys that aren't really qualified as like legit elite fighters. So, Rockhold has the chance to go out there, but he has to really start turning it up and not make any dumb mistakes anymore. Because he's already lost to Vitor. He's lost to Michael Bisping. That's a bad loss. To lose by knockout to Michael Bisping, that's a pretty damn bad loss. But I think he still has what it takes. David Branch, he's going to have a hard time coming in there against Luke Rockhold, who's just so good, so well-rounded. And David Branch, like I said, is very well-rounded in his own right, but I just think that Rockhold is better than him at every single aspect of mixed martial arts. It's going to be a nice fight. It's going to be a very fun fight, but Rockhold will get the win. I think it's going to be a submission in the third round because a lot of times Rockhold hurts the guy with like a head kick or a nice shot because he's very long, he's very rangy, he's just got a lot of really nice striking, both with his kicks and with his punches. I think he's going to hurt David Branch. He's going to eventually get it to the ground. Maybe David Branch will shoot him for a takedown, get himself mounted. Maybe we'll see a nice little Darce choke, something like that, because Rockhold has amazing submissions. He has a lot of unorthodox submissions as well. It's going to be a round 3 submission, a very fun fight. And I'm really curious to see what the fuck the UFC is going to do in the title picture because we have Michael Bisping, the champion, fighting GSP, who doesn't really deserve to be there, but he's only fighting for his name. And if he does beat Michael Bisping, what's he going to do next? Is he really going to want to fight a guy like Luke Rockhold who's like 4-5 inches taller than him, a much bigger guy, a much thicker guy? Is he really going to want to fight that guy? I don't really think so. He's probably going to want to move back down to 170 and fight maybe Tyron Woodley. He has said he wants to defend the title if he wins it, but I don't know how much I believe that. I'll take that with a grain of salt and see what happens. I'll see it when I believe it. I'll believe it when I see it, excuse me. And then what happens with Whittaker? He's out for who knows how long with that injury, but if he comes back healthy once GSP and Bisping have fought, isn't he the rightful number 1 contender because he is the interim champion? Or are they going to have Rockhold fight for the interim champion and then the interim champion will fight Bisping? I mean, it's just so weird in that weight class or GSP. It's just such a weird weight class right now. I hate the use of the interim championships. They're using them too often. It's really ruining the title pictures all the time because there's really never a clear number 1 contender who can just go out there and not have to deal with interim champions and just so much weirdness among the weight classes in general. So I hope that they will find the right solution to make that weight class really, really interesting because they have so many great fighters in there. It's a shame to see it so clogged up. Alright guys, that is it for the video. If you enjoyed it, please soccer kick the shit out of that like button. And also, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of the awesome UFC content I have coming up and all the other sports stuff that I have coming up. If you want to, please share the video with anybody you want to share it with. That's extremely helpful, and I'm always grateful to anybody who does that, so thank you if you do. Guys, I've been Diego from the Foot and Fist Sports Network. I'll see you in the next video, and enjoy the fights this weekend.